our deep embeddedness into the biosphere, the human and more than human biosphere, supports us to remember archaic memories of our lived human experience, which is stored in the collective unconscious, like a store archive. And because it's not only the biological thread which is passed down from generation to generation, but also the cultural thread, mixed in also with trauma and violence, but there is something passed on beyond the biological life. And this is like very deep, old, archaic experiences and memories, which we have no conscious rapport with. But in this time, of great confusion and uncertainty, to connect back with these very ancient memories of times of much more harmonious living with the biosphere can be very helpful. And I think this is what we are doing here. We are building a space, with amongst each other, even it's only a virtual space. And on Saturdays, people are really coming here in person, to do that collective sensing work together and opening up windows into a different way of connecting with so-called information. Because, when we do those practices, we can momentarily, communicate with deeper and wordless levels of archaic memories and also coherences, which can emerge organically under certain circumstances, and the circumstances are like a sense of being met at that place, a sense of safety, a sense of community, and a sense of goodwill and care. I think all of those different ingredients, open up that capacity, which is, a normal part of everyone's human inheritance. And these Wednesday spaces, which we are creating together, and also the Saturday spaces in person here, they can support, to transport us into a deeper immersion with this ancestral information. And, to allow even like the spatial presence to have its say, particularly here in the Earth Room itself. I've been creating that space, or let's say the space has come through me in order to have a symbolic space which also communicates. Because this space, with its cave-like presence and with the clay walls, is a representative of the earth herself and is always invited, even on our Wednesday meetings, because I'm sitting in this space, is always invited to also have its say. And to also include, more than human actors, such as once I've brought a plant in, but we can also bring a stone, bring a bowl of water, anything, and encourage the voice and the symbolism of those not more than human actors to also help us, to open up a dying narrative, a dying paradigm, and help us to listen and see into new terrain. Because we need that support, we need the support of a sense of safety, connectedness, and standing on a foundation which is so deep and so massive, that it can open up these earlier ways of connecting with information, which are wordless. And that's, what we seem to need, for our collective evolutionary trajectory to continue with some amount of health. We need that confidence, that we are belonging to a much bigger process, because we are so hijacked, by individualism and by the last few hundred years of conditioning, because they're the youngest ones, they are most on the surface. We have easy access to that, and everything, which is more in the past, in the archaic past, and archaic past of hominids, goes back 4 million years. So how do we, create spaces, where we can sense into that confidence and well-being, and from there, have that ease and support, to open up into that which we don't know yet. So it's a kind of revitalization of these ancient ways, or these archaic ways of coexistence and cooperation with the modern human world, rather than the dominance, which has taken root, over the last 10,000 plus years. And, today, many scientists agree on the fact that actually, before agriculture, the ways how human societies live together in small groups was mostly very, very peaceful, and not, what some of the schooling we have been receiving is trying to tell us, that caveman was like pulling his woman by her hair and things like that. That's all just fantasy, That's all just projection. And, a lot of scientists, archaeologists, and, all of those people who try to understand, how we lived in the distant past, speak about there was a sense of coexistence with the modern human world since about 4 million years, since the first hominids appeared. And then about 500,000 years ago, it shifted into cooperation. There was more capacity, to manipulate, because fire has been brought under control, and there were different tools and things like, coming into usage. And then about 14,000 years ago, with the dawning of agriculture, the dominance model started to emerge, and with it, patriarchy. But all before that, it was very different. And that memory, that collective memory, is also part and parcel of our humanity, which we all are having, encoded in our bodies. And we can actually, collectively touch into that sense of capacity for coexistence, for well-being, for harmony with the modern human world, because it's in us. It's just, covered over with a lot of loud material from the last, 10,000 years or so of warfare and dominance and so on and so forth. But we can go underneath that and connect ourselves with a much deeper time frame. And that gives us a sense of, it's not all that terrible as what our narratives tell us. We can change those narratives. We can connect them back with something much more deep and much more ancient, or let's call it archaic. Because all of these epochs are part of our collective human identity, and we can firmly, plant ourselves onto that ground, which takes us right back into the planet herself. And I find that very reassuring, really. And it sets free a powerful sense of belonging and deep connection with a self-organizing intelligence that it's so much vaster than what the human mind can fathom. And brings in deep archaic memories of well-being and confidence. And that's not like meant as an imitation of indigenous traditions or escapism into a long gone past, but it's more about a capacity, for poly communication, for poly culturalization of our capacity to communicate. And it's what diversity is all about, to not being stuck in the last 10,000 years of our past, but to allow much more deep time to be there for us to relate to as our ground, and taking us back right into the planet herself. And I think to have that sense of embeddedness and connectedness makes a big difference. And it's can give us a sense of confidence and vastness, which I feel helps me to balance out the worry and the stress, of what's currently happening on the planet. And when there's so much uncertainty, and there is, many, many people, not only in America, but also, for example, in Europe, being really quite afraid of, for example, the elections, which are coming up, because there's not a single candidate of any power who they can stand behind. Because it looks like, all of our systems, including the democracy, has reached its end of the capacity, to serve who we want to be. And that's really tragic, but I feel, if we are standing on this much deeper, deep time ground, there is a way to embrace this and get the strength and get the sense of courage, to get through this in some way, to open to this and not go down in despair. So I think, that's what I'd like us to experience together here, that sense of deep time, and that we can rely on that capacity and on the inheritance, which has been passed on to us. And we don't have to fix all of this, but we can allow ourselves to become a conduit of that life force. And, this is what we are doing here together in these Wednesday meetings. And we can see, what form it's going to take. So let's now, shift into the meditation part and find a posture we can sustain for about 35, 40 minutes. And dropping into the body, sensing the weight on the cushion on the chair. Where we all are kind of, we are aware of that something new needs to be born. And we all don't know what is it, what it's going to be, but we are all willing to be part of the welcome committee, cheering it on and making some space in our lives for it by coming here and not being fooled, by surface appearances. They need our attention, but it's not all what's operating. There's so much more than this. And our bodies are a direct plug-in into that more than human world. Because our bodies and the biosphere are made of the same substances. There is absolutely no difference. And this is like the key to remember. The body is the key. So allow your breath to take you into the body and allow the nervous system to guide you in. With the intention to restore ourselves to the community of a more than human world, to come back into community, to give up that crazy idea, that we could be the directors of a whole planet. This is just a fantasy, which we need to give up urgently. And we can rely on earlier archaic memories, where we haven't yet been believing that we even could do this. We can come back to that. We can remember that. And somehow, let go of this quite recent stuff. The last few hundred years, really, where it has become really intense. And that's, what the healing is all about. By going back into the community with the more than human world and allow that experience to, slowly but surely heal us through exposure, really. By osmosis, we learn. Also, by going into nature, by living more simply, by eating well, by exercising our bodies, all of those very simple things, they all are part and parcel of connecting back. And, giving up the dream of dominating and superseding Earth. So first, we are noticing we have arms and legs, and we are very closely related to the great apes. We are animals, really, mammalian animals called human beings or Homo sapiens. sapiens, this edition, which we are standing for. And we have very powerful minds, which have come up with amazing technological and scientific inventions and understandings. And we have developed quite one-sidedly for a few hundred years now, and we have we are called back. We are called back to into balance by the earth herself, and that's okay. That's just the way it is. It's like a pendulum. Now we are coming back, and the beauty of that process, that we can hear the calling. We don't know, really how it works, but somehow, as we are meeting here on the Wednesdays, we are meeting here because we can all hear that calling in some way. By, digesting the information we receive, and then we know, there's something is happening which needs our attention. And that something doesn't just communicate, with dualistic language, but it communicates on many levels, at the symbolic level in particular. And we can pick that up with our bodies. And that, that takes us back into more archaic ways of being, which are encoded in our bodies and minds in the store archive, which is mostly unconscious. But as we are allowing, this way of reflecting to touch us, it awakens. And we can sense, some rootedness into something much vaster than what meets the eye. And that's, what we can consider the medicine. Like to expose ourselves to those memories can give us so much more ground to stand on as the wind blows, the wind of change. Our rooting becomes more massive, our root system. And that makes all of the difference. And that can also be our service. Because there is a confidence coming from that rootedness, which we really dearly need at this time. So to tune into that data flow of ancient humanity. Which has emerged out of the modern human world. It's not separate. And how we can do our little bit to continue to carry that on. And at the same time, cultivating our minds, which have the possibility to liberate themselves from this process also. To really, let go of that grasping onto that process. But first, we need to have a measure of well-being before we can do that work. Because otherwise, the instincts and the fears and all of that stuff overtakes us, and the mind cannot see clearly. So we can't sidestep the body. We have tried, to do that over the centuries, to kind of sidestep it through science and technology, but it's not working. It's okay, to try, and then when you see it's not working, you just turn back and say, okay, that was a mistake. And I know that not just a mistake, there are also good things have been created, but it hasn't been completely fulfilling our dreams. Sometimes it does for a moment or two, and then bang, other information becomes available and it's not as we thought. I'm sure you've all experienced that. And still, there's this vibrancy of aliveness which we can sense. With the in-breath, really intimately connecting with the aliveness which permeates the whole body. And with the out breath, relaxing into the space, which also has a sense of vibrancy, but it's different. It's much finer vibrancy. The unmanifest and the manifest. And the oxygen which we are breathing in, comes to us from the plant world, the trees, the algae in the oceans, all of the greenery. That very intricate balance we are part of. And that, balance has been self-regulating itself since almost 5 billion years. And us, hominids, we appeared like about 4 million years ago only. So that's very, very small time. And then us Homo sapiens, maybe 200,000 years only. Having language since about 60,000 years. And before that, the communication was happening on a very different level. And all of that is accessible to us if we turn towards it. So not only the intelligence, of the more than human world in terms of intelligence of plants and animals and mountains and rivers and all of that, but also the intelligence of our own species. To work in cooperation with the modern human world and find ways of surviving for so long. So there's obviously something totally happening, which is not going to stop now because of the difficulties which are upon us, but it will be honed and changed by those bottlenecks. Those challenges will bring forth new capacities. The obstacles are not in the way, the obstacles are the way. That's how we learn, through challenges. If everything is easy, there's no learning. It's not, it's not necessarily pleasant, but that's how it is. And receiving what's happening in this way opens up a sense of okayness. And and the opportunity, to connect with the wisdom and the understanding we already hold inside, because it's our inheritance. But for a long time, we just didn't really resonate with that because we have been trained as separate entities, individuals. Individualism was the most celebrated way of being. And now we are starting to see, no, let's temper that. Let's open that up again. And, as we engage in this way, the information becomes available because it's all about the way, how you are looking at something. That's what you see. If you look in a certain way, you see in a certain way. And now we are shifting that. And then suddenly, bang, it's open up and we see complete different stuff, which was always here. And, as we are healing more, it opens up more. So then seeing ourselves as part of the modern human world, being an animal really, which is called a mammal, which is called Homo sapiens sapiens, and has emerged out of the planet over deep time. So the sensing that vast root system. There's no need, to push for anything. It's more just adding mindfulness, adding awareness, being more precise to what actually keeps us alive. It's the food we eat, it's the water we drink, it's the air we breathe, going to the bathroom. It's all of those very daily processes, which we easily overlook because they are so not special, not very much attended to, but that's what we need to attend to because that is where the track leads us into reality, the foundation of everything. So, adding mindfulness and awareness to what's already happening. And also, allowing that sense of mystery and wonder to give us a buoyancy and uplift in these uncertain times. Allowing ourselves, to be carried by the ancestors. We are standing on their shoulders anyway, if we are knowing it or not. There's something we can really lean into. Just really honoring the intelligence of this process. And, maybe we can bring up in our mind, bringing up the place, where we have been born, wherever that is, which continent, town, just bringing up that place and see, what comes to you, what feature, of the landscape there or the town. Just see, inviting the place where you have been born to come up and seeing, how it greets you. And see, if you can feel a sense of love for that place. What comes up? And also feeling the love the place has for you. There's like a special quality where the place, where we have been born, which connects this body of ours with that place. Why it has come through there and not somewhere else. Why it has emerged there. Through the help of our mothers, who, those mothers, they literally split their body into two. Amazing process. And really bringing the place close as a resource for you, a resource for us to have more of a relationship with the planet as a living being which has given birth to us through our mothers, and whom we can't escape in no manner. Wherever we, travel to the moon or to Mars, we need to take everything with us. We really belong here as long as we have these human bodies. And our solutions need to emerge from that understanding. Otherwise, they will not gain any traction. And we are not alone. We have this deep, deep ancestry we are part of, which has been handling, so much change and challenges over millions of years, about 4 million years. And of these 4 million years, just 14,000 years or so, the way of dominance and control has started to creep in. This is such a small portion. There's so much more ancient, archaic wisdom we can fall back onto if we allow it, if we open our minds to it and invite it in. And maybe you can sense that willingness in your own body and heart, to do this work. What else is there to be done, really? Trying to escape it by living in a dream world isn't really very attractive anymore. Looks quite destructive, actually. And to develop further what we have received from our ancestors by simply opening in this way. And, using the meditation teachings of the Buddha as a way to work with our minds, not being constantly hijacked, by our fears and desires, but opening up to something much deeper. As a community, because alone it is much too confusing and scary. And as we are healing more, it becomes much easier also to work with the mind. Mind has much more capacity to really be in the present. And, trust the process. As the past is digested, the future opens up. And it all happens in the present moment. And really sensing what calls us, what calls you, what calls me in a wordless way. It's more an intuition, a beckoning, an invitation to become more alive, to become a real Homo sapiens sapiens. For the benefit of all sentient beings, including ourselves and the modern human world.